This is Crime Watch, a Shelby TV production in cooperation with Shelby Township Police Department. Crime Watch is a bi-weekly program designed to inform viewers of criminal activity in the township. Here is Sergeant Ken Cassavant.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of Crime Watch. Today we're joined by Assistant Prosecutor Stephen Fox from Macomb County Prosecutor's Office. Stephen, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation.
Nice to have you here with us today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself before we get rolling on some questions that people sent in?
Sure, absolutely. I am an assistant prosecutor with the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office. I am what's called a principal trial attorney. So I do a lot of our capital level cases, homicide, armed robbery, more violent crimes, large-scale drug trafficking. I have a couple of those cases. I'm also the deputy chief of our senior crimes unit, so I'm very active in our scams division, which Eric Smith started immediately after he became county prosecutor. And then I'm also the head of our cold case unit. So for example, the Michael George comic book killer case that was out in the news probably more than any of us wanted it to be a couple years ago. I prosecuted that. I've been with the prosecutor's office for going on 9 years. And before that, I was at a large law firm in Detroit practicing complex commercial litigation, business litigation, labor and employment law. And I have some family law background and stuff like that. But for the last 9 years, I left that large firm to come here to Macomb County and work with guys like you trying to keep our community safe.
Okay, wonderful. So are you from the area? Did you grow up here in Michigan? Or?
No, I moved around quite a bit growing up. My mom was a teacher, so she was pretty stationary, but my dad owned, he's a dentist, and he owned a couple different businesses, so we moved around a little bit. But I moved to Macomb County back in 1999. It was either 99 or 2000. I lived in Warren for a number of years and then moved to Macomb Township. I live in Macomb Township now with my wife and two beautiful kids. I've got a 7-year-old son, Carter, and a 5-year-old daughter, Vivian.
Oh, wonderful. It's nice having you with us. You're a wonderful person. And
thank you.
I think we're blessed to have you here in Macomb County with us. Sounds like you've worked on quite a few big cases already, and you're very active with the prosecutor's office.
Yeah, Eric Smith, our county prosecutor, of course, has just done a phenomenal job, and I'm very lucky and very blessed that he's trusted me with some of our bigger cases. So it makes me proud to do that. It makes me proud to, I gave up a big firm lifestyle because I wanted to come here and really look out for all of us in the community and for the place where I've chosen to raise my family and my children and make the county the best it can be, because I know this is an absolutely wonderful place to live.
Sure. Yeah, it is. We're glad you're with us.
Thank you.
Talking about the prosecutor's office, do you have an estimate how many cases that they review? I know not all cases are prosecuted or warrants issued, but how many cases come before the prosecutor's office every year that you folks deal with?
It'd be difficult for me to estimate the number of cases, because there are times when police departments, as you know, all cases start with an investigation from a police department. Then they proceed to our office. We have a warrant division where they review all potential charges against people who have been arrested. That division then may authorize a case, but they may not. If they don't believe there's sufficient evidence to prove somebody guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, then oftentimes, our job is not to lock somebody up. Our job is not to just convict people. We absolutely strive to make sure we charge the right charges against the right person, because our job is justice. So there are thousands and thousands of cases that come before us each year. The last statistics I saw were a couple of years ago, where there were more than 20,000 cases authorized, not just reviewed, but authorized.
Wow.
So I don't want to be quoted on specific numbers because I can't give those, but I know we do review a significant number of cases, and we do each one very, very thoroughly. So it's a process, but we've got a great staff, and like I said, Eric Smith directs the office incredibly well, so it runs smoothly.
So out of all those cases that warrants are authorized, will there be a prosecutor assigned each of those cases? When they go to court, there's a prosecutor oversees that case then?
Yeah, well, we don't assign each particular case individually. There are different divisions within the prosecutor's office. We have, for example, the warrant unit I just spoke about that authorizes a number of the charges. We also have, for example, a child abuse and sex crimes unit. And those prosecutors are specifically assigned to handle child abuse cases and sexual assault cases. So they will review potential charges and authorize the warrants themselves for the cases they will handle. And then within that unit, there's a specific prosecutor assigned to each case. And obviously that's important because we want to make sure there's continuity dealing with victims that are especially vulnerable and have been through that type of case. We have other special units. For example, I'm the head of our cold case unit. I'm part of our senior crimes unit where we review those cases specifically for authorization. We also have a drug unit that handles high-level narcotics trafficking and drug dealing in the county, and those prosecutors handle the assigned cases that they deal with. We have an auto unit called the MATS unit, Macomb Auto Theft Squad. Is a law enforcement division that's made up of several departments, and we have a particular prosecutor who deals with cases that come out of the MATS unit. So there are a number of different divisions within the office. And then there are prosecutors who are assigned to, for example, district courts, where they handle all the cases that come through those district courts, all the misdemeanor level cases, all felony cases that, of course, as you know, I don't know about your viewing audience necessarily, but all felony cases start at the district court level. And from the district court, they then proceed up to the circuit court for a plea or a trial or some sort of resolution. So we have prosecutors assigned to the different district courts to handle those cases at that level. And then in the circuit court, there are specific prosecutors assigned to each circuit court judge. So for example, I spent a number of years assigned before Judge Diane Drzinski, several years in front of Judge Mark Switalski, and we can rotate, but there's every day a specific prosecutor assigned to a specific circuit court judge, again to make sure there's continuity with the case proceeding towards trial and dealing with victims and witnesses and stuff like that.
Well, it sounds like an important factor. I mean, I would want a prosecutor who specializes in prosecuting the type of crime that I'm trying to prosecute somebody for. I would think it'd be very important.
Yeah, it is, and obviously we can't do that for every type of crime. We can't have somebody that specializes in retail fraud and then another person that specializes in a particular area. But for some crimes, there needs to be that specialization because of the folks you're dealing with or the area of law. We have a consumers unit that deals with, for example, embezzlement cases or more corporate type crime, white collar type crime. That's it's unique in the way it's prosecuted. It's very labor intensive and it's very paper driven. So we have someone who's specifically assigned to that. We have a domestic violence prosecutor who's very, very good in dealing with domestic violence victims. And obviously there's some intricacies to dealing with those circumstances that we want to make sure we have someone that's dedicated to those cases so that nothing gets left behind and that victims are absolutely treated in the best way possible.
Actually, would you have an estimate of how many cases actually go to trial? I mean, I know we all hear the term plea bargain, and we're going to talk about that in a couple of minutes, what that's all about, because a lot of people don't think that's a good thing, but I think it's a very handy tool from what I've seen in the 23 years I've been in law enforcement. But how many cases would you say actually go to trial before a jury or judge?
It'd be unfair to give a number. Okay. I can say myself, I've tried well over 100 felony jury trials, but I've handled a number, obviously significantly more of cases than that. But the reality is this: there's a number of reasons for plea agreements. But again, Eric Smith has taken an incredibly strong stance, and I know a lot of the defense bar didn't like that when he came into office, but we have policies, for example, that if you have any prior felony conviction, you don't get a plea offer.
Oh, wow.
Certain types of crimes, life offenses, sexual assault cases, drug dealing, senior crimes, domestic violence, we will not reduce those charges. So there are a number of policies, and in fact, we have a whole manual of policies on cases we will not reduce. And that's the way it should be. We don't plead a case just because it's easy. There are times when plea agreements are necessary, and obviously if there are thousands and thousands of cases before a circuit court, not every one can go to trial.
Sure.
But no, the vast majority of cases are resolved short of a trial, and we always take into consideration first and foremost the victim's position on a case. And if a victim says, I'm not going to resolve it with a plea, then we make sure we resolve it, through a trial or a way that's satisfactory to them.
Could you explain what a plea agreement is? I mean,
sure.
It sounds like you're wheeling and dealing, and what does that entail?
No, I mean, a plea agreement is where we can resolve a case short of going to trial. We have, policies in place and personal policies, even if they're not office policies, where, for example, if we reduce a charge, So somebody is charged with a 4-year felony for larceny in a building. We could theoretically offer them an attempt larceny in a building, making it a 2-year felony. So it will reduce their maximum exposure. And for the benefit of the defendant, of course, they're interested in reducing charges where they can. Some benefits that inure to the prosecution and to the victims is, oftentimes victims don't want to go through the process of a trial. They want to resolve a case without having to go in front of a jury, or they want to get restitution quickly.
Sure.
We won't resolve a case where there's restitution outstanding unless the restitution is paid up front first.
Okay.
So, we want to make sure that that victim is made whole as quickly as possible. And in order to do that, sometimes it requires a plea resolution. But again, we always take the victim's viewpoint. We take their views, we take their opinions, and we operate from there. We start from there first.
Okay.
So no, it's not a backdoor type deal where we're doing something, behind a curtain, like in The Wizard of Oz or something like that. It's very much in the open. All plea offers are made, or all plea agreements are made on the record in front of the court.
Okay.
And most often in the circuit court, those plea agreements are not necessarily with the prosecutor. In other words, we talk to the defense and say, we're not reducing your charge. You're going to plead as charged to count 1. Now a lot of these defendants will then have the opportunity to talk with the judge about what's called a Cobb's agreement, where it's out of our control. We can oppose it, which we do quite often. I can tell you stories about what we've been through with that. Where the defendant and the circuit court judge then enter an agreement as to what the judge will probably sentence that defendant to. And if in fact the judge decides not to go through with that agreement, the defendant would then at that point have the right to withdraw his plea.
Okay.
So that's an agreement that we can't control so much because it's between the defendant and the judge. And more often than not, that's the way charges in the circuit court are getting resolved these days.
Well, I would think if we didn't have those options, cases would take years to go to trial, because we
That's
can't
right.
handle all those cases that go up to circuit court.
That's right. I mean, the circuit court prosecutors in the matter of a year handle hundreds of cases. So if you think that each trial would take, a short trial is 2 or 3 days, a long trial, I've been in one case that lasted more than 8 weeks. You couldn't possibly try each of those cases because they don't stop. I mean, day to day, week to week, and year to year, they continue to come in. And that would, number one, it would deny potentially a defendant's day in court and the justice that they deserve. But of course, from our perspective, it denies a victim the opportunity to have justice fulfilled.
Sure.
And whether that entails getting restitution or seeing the person that wronged them be held accountable by the court, we really want to make sure that the process is fair to everyone involved.
I'll tell you, I know my wife's happy that you guys work with plea agreements. She had jury duty recently, and the system is so slick right now. The county clerk's done a fine job of getting that organized, where she was there for half a day and that was it. And
That's
she was pleased when they said they've all been settled and it's time to go home.
It's interesting that the county clerk, you're right, Carmela Sabaugh has done a wonderful job. The county clerk's office and the circuit court have worked together very, very well. David Viviano, who's now, of course, a Supreme Court justice, was instrumental in some of the electronics that they've brought in so that the circuit court and the county clerk's office could make it, I guess, less painful for somebody to come in for jury duty.
Sure.
But I'll tell you this, and we bring in a panel of people to potentially sit on a jury, and no one is that enthusiastic generally when they get in the room. There are some, but
Sure.
for a large part, a lot of folks, they've had to take time off of work or away from their kids, away from school, whatever it might be. It's not their first choice of where they'd like to be that day. And I always talk to them about, it's not just like it is on TV, but I can assure you, by the time you're done, you'll be rewarded for serving. And I'll tell you, universally, I'm yet to have a juror after a trial tell me, what, this was a waste of time, or, I don't like the jury process, or something like that. No matter what they thought of the facts of the case or that, universally they've all told me the same thing, that they were glad to have gone through it. That they appreciated kind of the process when they see it in real life as opposed to the shortchanged version you see on TV, and very appreciative of the effort that goes into the process, both for their sake, for the prosecutor's sake, and for the defendant's sake, to see how everything works and that how everyone is kind of kept in check to make sure that the system works efficiently and fairly. So that's really neat to talk to folks afterwards and how their perception changes.
Sure. Now, I'll tell you what, I think most people who get that letter in the mail saying you're going to be serving jury duty have the same
Right.
response, like, oh gosh, I got to take off work, I got to find babysitters, kids have to go to school, what are we going to do? But I'll tell you, I was really pleased with what my wife went through. She had that same response when she got it, and she's like, oh, what can I do to get out of it? I says, just go do it. And she did, and after she was done, I took her to lunch, and things went well.
That's right.
It was a good day for her.
You know, it's funny, and that's why I wish, the courts are obviously open to the public. So when there are trials going on, you'll see a lot of times in the Macomb Daily, it'll have some of the bigger trials happening at the time. Come in and watch. They're open to the public. Anybody can come in and watch the court system in action. And it really does give a new appreciation. So if you are called for jury duty, please don't try to look for a way out, number one, because you can't. It's not fair. I know certainly if you were on trial, you wouldn't want people to try and scoot out of there because it's inconvenient for the day. But I think really you'll get more from it than you can really expect.
Sure. I know you specialize, you're part of the senior prosecutors unit over there, senior crimes, and I want to touch on that a little bit. We have a lot of viewers who are senior citizens, and I do quite a few programs in the senior center and the different various senior housing places, and I do programs over there. So I have a few questions for you I'd like to pass along. How much more vulnerable do you see seniors as being victims of crimes versus everyday people like you and I? Why do you think so?
Well, I think you're right that certainly seniors are targeted, and in fact, when I said this earlier, that our senior crimes unit, Eric started immediately once he became county prosecutor. And he did that in large part because as he was campaigning, whenever he was at an event, he would have a line of seniors come up to him and say, hey, this is happening to my neighbors, or I'm getting these phone calls, or what's happening. And there was no real division to pay specific attention to what they're going through and how they're being targeted. So he started what was called the Senior Stop Crimes Against Macomb Seniors, with the acronym SCAMS. We started that up immediately. It's now got a few people in it. Myself, Suzanne Fonts, and Derek Miller are the three prosecutors involved. And we do things that include going to senior retirement communities. We go to retirement divisions of, for example, the UAW and other retirement groups and senior groups, different churches, and we speak to them about how to avoid becoming the victim of a crime, because that's really our goal, is to be more proactive, is to never have their case come across our desk. And you're right, seniors are more targeted, and I think it's unfair to say they're targeted simply because of their age and because of, some do have physical limitations, which certainly I've got a trial starting next week. It's an armed robbery trial of two people in their early 80s. That they're less likely to fight back is one potential view. My view is a little different. Quite frankly, most seniors have what we all want, which is they've built through a lifetime of hard work. They've built savings. They've accumulated whether it's money or jewelry or possessions that have value. And that makes them a better target than somebody who's struggling month to month to make minimum wage and doesn't have those kind of savings built up. So a lot of the scams we have are financial in nature, and that's because those seniors have had a lifetime of accumulating money that a criminal wants to get after. And unfortunately, a lot of those seniors are victims of those they trust, whether it's family members, friends, caretakers. I would say the vast majority of our financial senior crime victims are victims of people who are close to them. So it's a shame, and it adds another layer of difficulty that we have to deal with and that they have to go through.
I guess the question, if it's loved ones or caretakers, how forthcoming are they to prosecute their grandson or friend of the family that's been there for years who's taking care of them, and either taking their medications, their money out of the bank accounts because they sign over so they can write checks for them and pay their bills and stuff. And there's a lot of different crimes against seniors, and loved ones are doing it. I mean, that's very prevalent. I see it in the police reports we take.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and it is hard. I mean, it's hard no matter what your age. You know, you don't want to believe that someone you're close to and someone you love or even like or just trust would ever want to hurt you, because you know you would never do that to them. So it is difficult. It's difficult whether it's a 25-year-old newly married woman and her husband, and they get into an argument that turns into a domestic violence case. It's hard to move forward for her, and it's just as hard for you know, a senior or someone who's been victimized by someone that they did trust. But unfortunately, you know, that's the way a lot of these cases are coming to our office through your departments. You know, oftentimes it's a son or a daughter, for example, who, you know, didn't wake up in the morning and say, you know what, I'm going to go steal all of mom's money today. You know, a lot of times it's a circumstance where, you know, the son or daughter is taking care of the bills for mom and has access to bank accounts, and son or daughter is a little short on their own bills this month. So they borrow some money, and, you know, not a problem, because I'm going to pay it right back.
Plan to repay it back.
I'm going to pay it back. Mom would loan it to me anyway, and she'll never know the difference. It's not that big of a deal. And unfortunately, the next month they need a little bit more, and it starts to accumulate and kind of snowball. And you know, at some point, mom's bank account no longer has funds in it. And you know, a lot of the cases we have start with that type of circumstance where it's not intended from the start to victimize mom or dad, but it becomes that quickly. So those cases are especially hard for mom or dad, because not only do they feel like they've been betrayed and that their personal money has been taken, something they trusted their child, you know, that trust has been violated, but they also sometimes feel bad for the fact that their child or someone they love is in that position to need that kind of help. And they may even feel guilty that they didn't see it forthcoming and they would have loaned it. You know, so it's, from an emotional perspective, it's understandably difficult for them, but they absolutely have to come forward. You know, they have to come forward. We recognize those difficulties. We want to work with them. Again, our job is not, you know, to take someone out to the street and embarrass them and beat them with rubber hoses or something and publicly flog them. I mean, that's not what we do. You know, we have to make sure that the victims, the moms, the dads, the seniors, that they're taken care of, and that, you know, they're not just taken care of for this moment, but for the years coming up. You know, those are life savings that they might not be able to get back into a workforce and to be able to recover for the years that that they've got coming up in the future. And quite frankly, the kids have to be held accountable. Whether it's kids or caretakers or financial advisors who are giving bad advice, you know, they need to be held accountable to make sure that they don't victimize anyone else, and that they, you know, get the restitution to the victims who they've already hurt. Now,
Steve, just a quick question: if I thought my mother was becoming the victim of a caretaker, could I just, we don't want to prosecute, we're just kind of looking at it, could you call your office and just discuss this with you folks and find out what the options are and where we go from here? Absolutely,
yeah. There's a number of different options. A lot of what we suggest always, especially when we're talking about personal finances and stuff like that, is to make sure everyone has two sets of eyes. So make sure mom and dad, if they have a caretaker, that someone else trusted is reviewing everything, whether it's bank statements, you know, expenses, things like that. If it's the son, make sure that the daughter is also doing it, or another close friend. And if someone, you know, that's reviewing and thinks there may be a concern, of course, your local police department is the first step for any criminal investigation. But our office, we have not only the 3 assistant prosecutors assigned to senior crimes, we actually have a victim's advocate, Chris Mizuraka, who's wonderful. Her job entirely revolves around seniors and making sure they're taken care of. So you can call our office, 586-469-5350, I know is going to be put up, is the general line to our office, and ask for Chris Mizuraka. And just ask her about what steps need to be taken, and she'll be happy to speak with you about potential concerns you may have and what steps to go forward with.
Okay, wonderful. You know, I went on Google today and I typed in Macomb County Prosecutors Senior Crimes. I didn't know what your address was to get to your website, but I know you have a website for the Stop Crimes Against Macomb Seniors. which if you go to Google and type Macomb County Prosecutor Senior Crimes, you will find the first thing that pops up is your website, and it has tips on there for seniors and families and phone numbers and all that, everything they may need if they have questions about it. So resources are out there. People just need to go look at them and not hesitate to call you folks when they have questions about their seniors.
You're absolutely right. In fact, we have a whole booklet. It's about a 20-page booklet that has not only tips about what to avoid, how to avoid it, how to protect your personal information, contact information for different organizations, whether it's do not call registries or Better Business Bureau, all kinds of great resources. And of course, we're there to help too. Okay. So, I mean, my personal number, I'll tell you, is 586-466-4115. If a senior has a concern, they can reach out to me and I'll do what I can to help.
Wonderful. I'll tell you what, Steve, I appreciate all you guys do. You guys do a wonderful job up at the prosecutor's office, and we deal with you every day. We have an officer who goes to your office every day.
That's right.
Takes warrants up there, and he speaks highly of you folks. I mean, we see you in court, but he sees you guys every day.
Well, thank you, Sergeant. I mean, we owe everything to you guys. You're the ones on the front lines keeping us safe, so you guys do an incredible job.
We work as a good team. Yes. Before we leave, just one big question. I mean, you've been with Macomb County Prosecutor's Office for a while. How do you see crime here in Macomb County? Is it getting better, worse? What's been happening?
I think things are going well. I mean, obviously we have wonderful police departments throughout the county, and of course here in Shelby Township, you guys are blessed with a fantastic police department, even in challenging economic times. You guys really do a great job. Macomb Township, for example, is patrolled by the Sheriff's Department. The Sheriff's Department is doing incredibly well. So we're very lucky that we have great departments in the county. The prosecutor's office, obviously, we seek to only hire the best and the brightest, and to make sure that you've got people who are really dedicated to this community. They're really dedicated to keeping us safe. Yeah. Numbers-wise, I think the county is doing well, but certainly crime doesn't stop.
No.
And it's, as you very well know, every morning when you wake up, you don't know what you're going to see. You hope for the best, but unfortunately sometimes it turns to the worst. And we're very blessed to have police departments like yours and great departments throughout the county taking care of all of us.
Well, thank you guys for all the work you do up there. You guys do a wonderful job, and it's a pleasure meeting you. Thank you very much.
It's great to see you, Sergeant. Okay.
Well, as I say every episode of Crime Watch before I leave, stay vigilant to your surroundings and call the police department when you see something or someone suspicious in your neighborhood, because you have a police force who will take these crooks and hoodlums to jail, and you have a prosecutor's office who will convict them. Until next time, have a good day.